Another beautiful day to ride. Days like today are when bikes like this really shine. I learned on motorcycles without traction control and without analog brakes. And while you should not rely on having those things when riding a motorcycle, boy, is it nice. I think the deepest water I have taken this through is during a flash flood in Colorado. Or was it Arizona? No, it was Colorado. And I was going to pull over and not go through it, but another adventure bike was ahead of me, and he seemed as if he knew what he was doing, or he was from the place where we were riding, because it didn't faze him at all. I was afraid I was going to hit like a drainage grate, or an open manhole or something that had popped open, but I just followed him, and we went through water that was up over my calves, almost up to my knees on this thing. And the swept up exhaust, I see the benefit of that. And we were going at a pretty good clip too. I think tomorrow is supposed to be worse weather-wise, so today was really kind of the day to ride. I don't think there'll be a whole lot of dodging raindrops today, though. This is kind of like a heavy soaker that's setting over most of Ohio. Just slow-moving, drizzling rain, nothing too severe, just all green on the weather map. But it is almost Labor Day and almost the end of Melissa's vacation, so I'm taking advantage of her being home to be with the dogs so that I can get out and just ride around a little bit. I'd originally wanted to do a camping trip, but there's some other things going on, so I think I'll just pick a weekend and go do that. Some regular weekend that she is home and doesn't feel like doing anything. There's two things you shouldn't talk about. Religion and politics. So let's do both of those. Where do we begin? How do we offend the most people in the shortest amount of time? I feel as though these two topics are it. Where do I fall along the spectrum of religion? Even that statement, I think, would upset people. I've only scratched the surface of comparative religion. I know more about Christianity, I think, than I do any other religion, just because it is the dominant or predominant one in my country and culture. And faith-wise, I would say that I'm agnostic, whereas I don't believe that the existence of God can either be confirmed or denied. And, I think that's, many people would probably think that's cowardly atheism, but I think it's just honesty. I mean, in my opinion, a lot of religions fall into the same pitfall of thinking that they are the chosen people and that they have the divine right and the divine power to rule over everyone and everything. And I think that in our country, it's, we often say freedom of religion, but I honestly and truly believe that it's freedom from religion as well. I mean, you can not only pick the religion that you have, but you also have freedom from that religion. That's why we have a government. I mean, we don't We don't have freedom for the government. The damn government's taking over the country. but one of the things our nation got right is that we do have freedom from religion, and that includes being persecuted for not having faith. All right, in politics. So I guess from that statement you can kind of infer that I am, or deduce, which one? Deduct? Well, you can figure out that I am not a Republican, but I have Republican-leaning tendencies in many things, and I'm not fully a Democrat either. I think the polarization of this nation has gotten very bad. I mean, I'm not to blame any one event, but just I would say during the most recent wars in the Middle East, the polarization got even worse and worse, and it reached a fever pitch I think during Trump. But that is part of what happened in this country, is that the middle, the moderates on both sides for a period of time, I think if they're starting to come back now, were removed. They say the silent majority, but I'm not even sure that, I don't think they're a majority. Certainly for a period of time, they were not a majority anymore, or at least they were not just silent, they were hibernating. But I'm pro-choice. I'm pro, social programs for the poor. I mean, my own grandfather was, part of the New Deal. I mean, that's how he found work back in the day, that saved the nation from the Depression, which, in my opinion, was caused by deregulation, or the lack of regulation on Wall Street, which a lot of, the SEC was put in place and everything after, during the New Deal. I think greed has to be tempered in our nation. But I am pro-gun. I grew up, around firearms, and to me, they make me feel safe, whereas to other people, I think it's unsettling for them. But gun safety used to be taught in schools. It was the hunting ethic, or the ethic of the hunter, just the ethic of gun ownership is not something that is taught today. Unless you are a hunter, or unless you grow up in the country, or in a pro-gun household, and I think that's a shame. I think that we have an availability of guns, but we do not have the education that should be required, or that should be instilled upon people, and I guess that's part of the problem. How do you measure, how an individual grew up? Do they have, proper, the moral compass, so to say, to own a gun, or do they even know how to properly store and clean and keep a firearm? So I am pro-gun, but I'm, also pro-regulation in some aspects, in some respects. I think a lot can be softened. I think a lot of the violence can be staved off if we just ran, proper background checks and eliminated a lot of loopholes. For one, I don't think an adult should be able to buy their child, certain firearms. But I do think that those firearms, should be legal. And certain firearms being, the AR-15. I don't think you should be able to buy someone else one of those. And I think that, while it's a hunting rifle and it is, America's rifle, I think maybe if you're going to make handgun ownership start at 21, then I think probably you should make AR-15 ownership start at 21 also. Or drop them all down to 18. Either way, I think across the board, you got to be fair, you got to be consistent. And this is where I'll get off 84. I have no interest in taking it all through town. With a background in education, I think that we're, as biologically and physiologically, we're a very intelligent species with giant brains, and the smarter, a life form is, the larger its head is going to be. And quite simply, human development takes a lot longer than most people realize. I think it's no accident that the draft starts at 18, but I do not think that you are fully developed cognitively until much later. Maybe women are developed faster cognitively, but even that, I don't think so. I think you can educate and learn and book learn all you want, but until you are, until you have experienced certain things or been put in certain situations, you are still developing. And some people never do, but I think you give everyone a better chance if you just gave them a little bit more time. Now, drinking, you should be allowed to do that out of the womb because you're going to need it. Some places, I think they do. Come right out of the womb and hand them a beer. No, same thing there. I mean, that is not to say that everyone under 18 is immature and everyone over 18 is mature. It's just a general blanket statement, and that's what laws are. You have to make generalizations. You have to, in order to regulate, you have to catch, you have to cast a slightly wider net. You have to make assumptions on people that they aren't necessarily going to like. But there should be lines to public safety. And I think you should engage gun owners in the ways to make firearms more safe, the things to do to make the country safer. I think responsible gun owners, while a lot of people may think that is an oxymoron or that is rare to find, they are out there. And we may be losing that generation as we encroach more and more into the wild places in this country and people distance themselves from firearms, and we create wild situations with wild people instead in cities and towns and pack them onto each other. That's one of the things that sort of depressed me when I drove across the country. I mean, I had to stick to certain areas. I was limited on time, so I needed to use main thoroughfares. But when you drive across the country, there's a meme that exemplifies it perfectly. There's Lewis and Clark, but there was an image of Lewis and Clark looking out over a valley, about the potential of, what the land had to offer. And then the next frame below it was just off ramps and on ramps to interstates and a bunch of gas stations and, fast food. And there's a lot of truth to that. And it's actually a problem in this country, for wildlife management, is that there's areas are isolated now by towns and roadways. Like what we have now are wild pockets that exist amongst, our transportation networks and our homes and businesses and factories. And so they're building overpasses and underpasses for wildlife to get from one wild pocket to another so that they don't become inbred and die off and have a bunch of health problems. I think that, coupled with, the lack of hunters, lack of game management, a lot of places around here now are encountering that chronic wasting disease with deer. And, places that have, I'm going to sound like, my parents. At one time there were no deer in this area. And so they went up to Michigan, I believe, or Wisconsin, one of those states. I think Wisconsin. So all of the deer in Pennsylvania, Ohio area, because it had just been lumbered out and just stripped, basically bare, that they had to bring deer down to repopulate. And some time after that, the population then, recovered and grew because, there were less people. And I've heard stories of the ground shaking when herds of deer would come by, like you were, and I know that sounds silly, but when you are out hunting, you're very still and it's very quiet and you are attuned to, even slight vibrations or sounds or even smells. You know, oftentimes I've smelled deer, which sounds ridiculous, but it's true. They give off an odor, especially around the rut. But yeah, you know, there were more than there are now. That's one of the big things one of the big changes out here is that I was always, you know, afraid I was going to hit a deer, but I rarely encounter one. I mean, on the roadway. Whereas, you know, Pennsylvania, there were a lot more, but now there are not. I think all of the deer got that, what they're calling zombie disease, where they, you know, they're like walking dead. I'm reusing roads that I've used before, and that's just because there are no good ways to get out of where I live. I'm sorry, my back is always to the lake, or my front is to the lake, so anywhere I go I have to use, you know, a main drag. And this is more like more of a relaxed, less congested route in which to get out of town. Otherwise I have to get on an interstate, or I have to, you know, drive past stoplight after stoplight. This way I can make a lot of right turns where I, you know, don't have to necessarily wait for lights to turn. I don't have to stop, you know, I can keep moving, which is what I like. I don't mind being in traffic if I'm still moving. And you can't lane split in Ohio right now. So, and not that there's very many places to do that other than, you know, those interstates that I don't want to be on anyway, but maybe I would take them more often if we could do that. But the way people are around here, even if that became legal, one, people wouldn't know that it was legal for a long time, and two, it would still piss them off. So I'd imagine there'd be open doors and people jerking their wheel into the center, you know, into the white line and everything else. And I've even heard it from people that I know, or, you know, people that I grew up with, is that, you know, by fall, pretty much everyone's sick of motorcycle, or, you know, motorcycle riders. They're sick of the speeding, or, you know, the revving the motor, or whatever it is that we do that upsets everybody. I don't know if it's because this doesn't have the riding computer in the wheel or what, but it's just, you know, it's just got like one mode, and that's fucking haul ass. And it doesn't have, like, you know, off-road or sport mode or economy or, you know, whatever other modes they have on these things. And my philosophy when I bought the bike, I mean, it was cheaper anyway, and I just thought, well, that's less things that can go bad. You know, the ride-by-wire thing, even when I bought it, made me nervous. I was like, oh, man. But I haven't had, you know, really any trouble with that. I think some of the switches, like the, I can't think, it's got a goofy name for it, but like the clutch switch, neutral safety switch, and then there's one other one that's got some sort of like perpetual motion. I can't think of it off the top of my head, and that's not it, but it's the gear selector switch, but they call it something strange that you know, I'd never encountered before I started working on motorcycles. But I think those contacts become slightly corroded, and, you know, you have to clean them. But after, you know, I was riding and those switches started, you know, getting to work out, they just stopped. But I'll have to remember that next year when I pull the bike out. In fact, when I put it away, I'll probably put some dielectric grease on it and make sure all the contacts are shiny and doing their job. I do like to sit down and write. I've always liked to write. And that was one of the things that appealed to me about the motovlogging, that I could sit down and write first, and then have a way to publish, or a way to put down, you know, my thoughts and everything that I wanted to say or to preserve. And I haven't been doing that because I just haven't had the time, and I just can't think. I can't think in that house with the dogs and everything to do. I know it's vacation, but, you know, someone's always watching TV, or there's, you know, always something else to do other than, you know, sit down and have quiet time, milk and cookies, and then a nap. But I'm a firm believer in writing. I think that a lot of It's self-actualization, and it's a way to constantly, even if you only use it as a way to constantly reflect upon and make better the things in your life. It's a very powerful tool. A lot of times you'll just throw up your hands and not know why something went wrong or why something is not right. And yet, if you just sat down and gave yourself some time to, put down what you really mean or what you really think, and then to mull that over in your head, maybe sometimes it takes a while. It takes a couple of days, it takes a week, or, I say diary, but I think that has a very feminine connotation in our culture. But, a journal perhaps would be a better word to use, journaling. But let's face it, it's just having a diary. And whether you do that electronically, which now is probably the safest way, or whether you actually write it down in a, some fancy leather-bound journal, I think it's very important. I think it's as important as the ability to read and comprehend and to teach yourself new things. That's the goal of education, is that one day you become, it's self-efficacy. One day you become your own teacher, which is a really necessary skill. And it's really useful for society, I think, in large, to not be bamboozled. And people, for the most part, will generally agree on certain freedoms and the process by which facts are created and the scientific method and tested. But I think they just get caught up in adhering to whatever they hear or whatever their neighbors believe. They want to belong. And that's your freedom. That's your right. But I would at least hope that you would have decided to do that on your own. And it isn't just peer pressure. If you want to be a follower, but be a thinking follower. There is irony in the fact that a person can call you fat or, whatever so much that it will make you feel small. That it has the exact opposite effect upon you of what I imagine the attendant harassment, is supposed to do. Make you feel, big and bulbous and gross and, obtrusive and unfit for life, which that was a good one. That was probably one of my favorite comments. You're too fat for life. But it has the opposite effect. It makes you feel very small and worthless and unable to stick up for yourself and defend yourself. Just beautiful. Beautiful temperature, beautiful scenery. I don't know if it's even still recording, but just gorgeous. That was something I learned from a person that was in the military, told me once. But, said a lot of people do not get out when the weather's cold and enjoy the world. They don't get out when it's wet or when it's cold or, when the weather's bad. And honestly, I think that sometimes those are the most beautiful moments. The stillness of winter and the glistening, sparkling, gleaming snow, or even the deep richness of colors when it rains. Everything becomes a deeper shade. The hail, there's not much good you can say about that. That just hurts. But really the really dramatic, violent skies are also beautiful. That produce the hail. The updrafts and the big what do they call those thunderclouds? Supercells. There you go. Terrifying, but awful and beautiful at the same time. Awe-inspiring. I both like and detest that we speak in memes now. But I am, a visual learner in some regards, and so it helps to exemplify my point, or the message I want to get through. But there is a meme that has a bunch of emotions. It's a flow chart of sorts, and it says, sad, angry, happy, tired, depressed, and every, emotion, all the big ones anyway that you can have. All lines point to go ride the bike, except when you're sick. When you're sick, it goes to clean the bike. But depending on the kind of sickness you have, I think even that could be cured and remedied by a nice ride. And to me, today, this now, is a nice ride. I'm going to do a quick time check, maybe. Oh, this is is this a road, or? Oh, yeah, I guess it is. Looks like someone's driveway. No ICM. I don't even know what that means. Trumbull County now. It doesn't say no outlet, so this road goes somewhere. Ducks. Lots of ducks. Not dirt, but definitely kind of rough. There's some dirt areas here. Whoa, especially here. I love this bike so much. 35 in through here now. Now we got some dirt. Impassable during high water. All right. Oh, there's some scree there. Looks like it was just freshly graded. I don't even know what time it is. I lose track of this thing. Unless it's got to be somewhere at 4. So hopefully it's not that late, but we'll make a beeline home now. It could have only been an hour. It could have been 10. I don't know. Get on this thing, and it really does transport you into it. I don't know what the hell that was. That was pretty weird. Something touched my shoulder. Oh, weird. Just something flew up. Hit me, bird maybe? That was weird as fuck, man. On that corner, something touched my shoulder. Like it was a hand or a bird or something that came to rest on that shoulder. That was really weird. It almost like there's something flew off the bike. Everything, camera's still there. Oh, I lost the GoPro. That's what it was. Hit my shoulder and hit the ground. Lost the footage. Fine place to turn around up here. Here we go. Wonder why that thing came on snap. Must not have been lashed all the way. So it wasn't the hand of Jesus. It was my camera. Oh, it came unglued, I think. So, go figure. That's weird. But I have 2 other camera angles, so we'll see what happened there. There's only 1 video on this when I found it. However, the charge on the camera is full bore. So after an hour of riding, there shouldn't be 3 hours and 22 minutes left on the camera. There should be over an hour of footage on here. But there's only 1 video at 2 minutes long, so not sure what happened there, but camera recovered.